Welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. This is episode 3 titled 27% in the House. And we want to talk about the amount of women that are running and getting elected to office in Canada. My name is Melissa Durrell and I'm your host, inspiring, uniting, and leading the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Let's bring in our guests right here, right now. Our guests today are Shay Marville. She is the VP at Origin Active Lifestyles. She's run federally and provincially. She's the director of the Children's Own Museum, and she formerly ran her own business as a consultant, Shay Marville and Company, which was coaching diversity, life management, and mindfulness training. Welcome, Shay.
Hi.
And we also have Karen Scian joining us. She is the former city councillor. She's president of The Talent, which is a business solutions organization. She was both an elementary school teacher and a college professor. And I am proud to say that Karen Scian and I sat on the only, or I think it was the only majority female city council in Canada 3 years ago. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And we want to talk about getting involved in politics today. And so the first question I want to ask you is, why did you run? Karen, let's start with you. Why did you run?
I ran pretty simple reasons, I think. I was looking for a way to get more involved in our community, our local community. And I was pretty naive about everything that was involved, but I was determined to really speak up for families and for kids at the time, Melissa, before that, before we were on council together, it was all men all the time. And so I was pretty determined to shake that up a little bit, and was lucky to come on to council with a lot of, a nice bulk of women there. But mostly it was to bring the family voice and that next generation's voice to the decision-making tables.
Shay, how about you? Why did you run?
Well, I've been involved in politics probably since I was 12. So in some shape, way, or form, I've always been involved in activism. I come from a family where my uncle was very involved in the Liberal government and was mayor. And so politics wasn't a uncommon thing to me. I studied political science, and, being a woman, being a person of color, coming from, marginalized community, and living also in society, you get to see all the different realities, or a lot of them. So, I always thought about politics. I never thought necessarily that I needed to win, but I always thought it was important to run and to participate. And, I'm really a person who believes that politics is about participation. So for me, I felt, as a mother, I have 4 kids, and I was seeing so many things around poverty, around some of the issues in healthcare, in terms of people having access to healthcare, even though we have universal health, and, issues around daycare, and, issues around, access to good education and access for kids with disabilities. There's a plethora of things, of reasons to run.
Hallelujah.
And I just was surprised that the public space did not seem to be a space where we could talk about the real lives of people. So, that's why I got involved, and, some people said excessively involved. That's what my mother would say. And, I'm glad I did. I'm so glad I ran. It's transformed. Has it transformed my life? I'm the same person that I was before I ran. It was very difficult to run. It's very damaging to your life.
Let's get into that later, because we don't want to.
But I'm glad I did run. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing, because Karen, I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, because I love how Shay says she got excessively involved. That was your story too, right? Like, I mean, for you, you actually gave up your career as a teacher, and then and became almost a full-time city councilor for a period there. So
I did, and it was once you're in it, and I think the love of the work takes over everything. And I have to tell you that it was probably the most exciting time from a career perspective, the most exciting time of my life.
Yeah.
But also it was a constant learning curve. So I always encourage people when I'm talking to them about being involved in politics, it's about be really mindful of the fact that you don't have all the answers. But your job as an elected official, as a political leader, and you know, Melissa, how much I hate the word politician. I prefer the phrase political leaders.
Yeah.
Because there are politicians and then there are political leaders. As a political leader, really your job is to figure out how to connect the dots, make sure that all the information's on the table, that you're on the constant quest for the best information and proper stakeholder engagement, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it turned into a full-time calling for, you know, less than part-time pay. And but that's the reality of being in politics sometimes. But it was, I'd say, transformational in a lot of ways.
So as I mentioned earlier, I got to go to Detroit to the women's conference, and I was so pumped up. It's not just the amount of coffee I drank today. But like, those American women are ready to run. Like, they are so pumped up. And there was this awesome moment where the president of Emily's List, which is the American Political Action, or as we call them, PACs, and it aims to elect pro-choice Democratic female candidates to office. So she's standing on the stage. There's probably 2,000 to 3,000 women, all pumped up and ready to listen to Maxine Waters, who blew the roof off of the space. But so she says to this huge group of women, we're all sitting down, we're pumped up, and she says, everyone who is a female elected official, stand up. And so I did, because I'm a little city councillor from Waterloo, and I stood up, and there were very few other women that stood up.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing, because when you're sitting down with 2,500 people, it doesn't seem like that big of a crowd. But when you stand up in front of 2,500 people, you feel really singled out. And it was like goosebump city. But the best part of it was, then she said, I want every woman who's going to run in the next election to stand up. Oh. And hundreds of women stood up around me. And it was like one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And
getting the chills right now.
Me too. I got the chills as well.
It was awesome. And so, you know, how do we get our Canadian women to feel that pumped up and ready to roll? What do we have to do that? Because, you know, we don't have a Trump here. So, and, you know, that was the catalyst. That was the rally call. So what do we need to do in Canada to get women to stand up and actually say, I'm ready to run? Shay, you start.
You know, I hesitate to answer this question, only that I could wax on about it, but also because my point of view is it's harsh. And what I mean is, I think that a lot of women, a lot of us in Canada have made a decision to sit out. And are not interested in participating in public life because they feel that they don't have a voice, or that it's of value because they are so busy working and parenting and looking after elder parents or relatives, and, you know, multitasking to death. And because of that, you know, politics and being a professional politician doesn't make sense. Politics requires a tremendous amount of sacrifice and having to at times leave your kids at home or take your kids out late at night with you. And you know, you all know, you both know. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy doing it. I mean, I loved it, and I involved my family in it, so that it wasn't like a 9-to-5 job. It was 24/7
lifestyle.
But I have to tell you, the people who pushed back against me the most were women. Were some women in my family, some of my friends, you know, women that you would meet on the street. Just like, the biggest question was, when do you have time? To knock on doors and I'd always say, how do you not have the time? Like, how can you accept, you know, being paid less than men? How can you accept that we don't have universal child care? Or, you know, or that, you know, so many women are living in poverty, and that means their children are living in poverty, you know, but for so many of us, we have been trying to become business people and to become equal and independent. And we have bought into the belief that equality is here, that it's a meritocracy, and that, you know, feminism was something in yesterday's time, not now.
Wow.
And so women have to change. It's you know, the system, yes, and men, yes, but it's us. We have to stop policing other women. We have to encourage women to speak truthfully about whatever they are interested in and to take chances. And if that means going to Parliament with their kids, do it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Shay. I think that that's a really good point. And Karen, for you, what do you think it is that's going to get women to stand up, frankly, and run?
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in fighting back against complacency. And I always, you know, we didn't expect Trump really to happen down there either, right? So we're really only one step away at any point in time from sliding back in time in a lot of ways. So I have moved to a place in my mind, and I'm 52. So when I turned 50, when I went over that line, my perspective on so many things changed. And right now, it's instead of waiting or measuring my response or measuring my my voice when it comes to issues like this, I'm all in. Like, I am 100% in. Yeah. And I have been as forthright now as saying that I am supporting female candidates, period. And in the hope that we get to 50%, because as far as I'm concerned, it has to be 50%.
Yeah.
50%. And I'm not of the mindset that we're here to take over the world. I'm in the mindset that we're here to share the world in the way that we're supposed to share the world. Yeah. And that includes at that decision-making table. So I have to think that that's not just isolated to where we're living. I have to think that passion for moving forward on this conversation is being ignited across the country. And it's up to people like us to make sure, and the Women's March Canada and all of that, to make sure that we take the leadership role in mentoring people to come up. If it's not us, then perhaps it's somebody that's maybe a little bit younger or got a little more fire in their belly or whatever, but we have to be there to support that next generation of elected officials.
I'm going to change the episode title from 27% in the House to hashtag all in. Okay, so I love that. And I think, you know what, Shay, one of my favorite panels that I was at in Detroit was called Build Her Up, Don't Tear Her Down, Avoiding Standing in Our Own Way. And you totally touched on that when you were speaking about how we get women to run. But let's dig a little bit deeper into that, and just talk to me about what are, you know, how do we get women to from saying things like, you know, and I hear it all the time, when do you have time for your children? Or do you have enough time for this? Like, how do we get from that to going, you know, how can I help? What do you need? Because I love what you're doing. Do you need support? Like, where is that?
I think, you know, like one of the things I loved about being in politics was, you know, just participating in the writing association. Like, so I believe in get involved in your writing, get involved with groups in the community that are, you know, diverse and that are trying to fight poverty or trying to fight for, you know, the environment. Get involved with groups. I really believe that people should go check things out. They should go shop around and see, you know, what politics that really motivates them, what really makes that fire in the belly burn. And I don't believe in actually, and I know this is, you know, not a great thing to say when you have been in party politics, but I don't believe in party politics. I believe in supporting candidates who have the same values, who need help and need support. And I think that women are, you know, to generalize, and I think women are often more relationship based. So if we get involved in organizations and groups that, you know, that we have a relationship with, and we feel support the values that we believe in, then we have more energy, right? Like our capacity to do more just expands, and then and build friendships. And so that's really important. I think also for young women in university who probably have more access to feminist literature and political literature, I think don't stop. Read as much as you can, educate yourself as much as you can, and stay involved, because there's this tendency to keep thinking that life will happen. You know, I'll get into politics later. I'm going to finish school, and then I'm going to go into the workplace, and, you know, maybe I'll get married, or, you know, or I'm going to build wealth, or, you know, whatever they're interested in. And then I'm going to get back into politics. And what ends up happening is that we actually get disengaged from politics when we're not involved in different groups. And what happens also is our culture doesn't really support it's not about a marketplace of ideas. It's about a marketplace of consumerism and of buying power and wealth power. So that's the conversation that dominates everything. And if you're not talking about, you know, the value of your house, or buying a house, or, you know, buying the nice car, or, you know, how much, you know, you're going to put into your RSPs or your retirement, not that that's bad, but if you're not talking about those things, you get isolated.
Yeah, you do.
When you start to talk about the issues that are affecting, you know, everyone's life, and especially marginalized people, and in particular, you know, women. And there's a tendency also to start to see ourselves as individuals, which, yes, we are, but no, we're not. And we are, in the sense of our, you know, our internal dignity and what makes us unique, but we're not in terms of, you know, group power and being empowered in the workplace, and, you know, in terms of wages. When you look around boards that are not for profits, who do you see at the boardroom?
Women.
Right? When you go to the grocery store, who do you see at the cash register? Who do you see shopping in the aisles? It is predominantly women and my husband. You know what I mean? He does all of that. And there are a lot of men who do that, but not the majority, because the culture we're in educates us into these gender roles that then when we get older and get into the workplace, we get further and further away from the issues that are actually affecting us. And then we come up with this idea that they don't really matter. It doesn't really count. Like, do you know how many women I met who said they don't vote?
Yeah, I don't even want to hear it.
I don't want to know.
Yeah. So how do you get people who don't even vote to come out and support you? Only way is through relationship and building, you know, friendships and finding values and being involved in a group. And then the other thing that I really believe in is I would like to work behind the scenes for great candidates, and I'd like to help them raise money, because you know, that is one of the biggest obstacles to participating in politics is not having enough money. Most of us who are women in politics, we often have 1 or 2 jobs and we're running. If you look at some of the men who are involved in politics, they have 1 job, and that is to win.
Yeah. Karen, what do you think?
There's a lot there. Yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful. And it makes me think of how we value such superficial things. And even, you know, you go to where most of our young people and most of us exist right now, which is on social media platforms, and how everything is superficial. And there's always that kind of ongoing conversation about, you know, people unfriending people because they post about politics or social justice or whatever. Well, I'd rather see you posting about important things than to see what you had for dinner last night. So there's 2 sides to that coin, but we live in a society that would rather see what you had for dinner last night.
Right.
And that's a sad kind of place to be. And that's where complacency takes hold and takes root and starts to grow. And then all of a sudden you turn around and something dramatic has happened, like Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States.
Right.
Yeah. So we have a collective responsibility to make sure that we're focusing on the right conversations, and that we're teaching our kids to focus on the right conversations. I loved how Shay said that about making sure that those young people who are inspired coming out of university maintain that inspiration and that education.
You know, one thing that you've done really well, Karen, is you're on boards of directors that have predominantly been male. And what did that look like for you? Because I hear from a lot of women, and Shay, I don't know, I'd love to hear what kind of boards you're on, but Karen, I know you sit on the LIN here in our area. So what does that look like? Because I mean, it's about getting elected, but it's also, and I think a really important is staying engaged. And the big decisions are being made around board tables at that local level. How did you do that?
This is something I teach my students as well. I've always been one to keep an eye on my entire portfolio, my entire resume, and to make sure that I am not becoming one thing. So, you know, yeah, I started off as a kindergarten teacher, but I was determined to make sure that I wasn't just, you know, that wasn't just who I was. So once I transitioned into politics, that's when I went back to grad school and then got my master's degree and became, you know, prepared to teach in the post-secondary world. Then I opened my own business, and I always made sure I was keeping an eye on that kind of growing bouquet of talents that I could offer. And I think it's about credibility. I really do. I think it's about making sure that I've never walked away from the fact that, you know, I'm 100% in as a female leader in our community, and women's issues are always front of mind, and social justice issues are always front of mind for me. But I have an eye to what that credibility piece looks like in all those different arenas. It was, you know, started with the Hydro Board. I was the first female finance chair at the City of Waterloo. I was the first female liaison for our fire department. That was kind of a unique thing. And then I became, you know, this and this and that. And that was really important to me, to make sure that I pushed those. But Melissa, when I started on, and you and I have had this conversation, when I started on council, my first council liaison appointment was to the Human Resources Department. And that to me was such a female pigeonholing kind of thing. I thought, you know what? I got a little angry about it. and I said, you know what? That's not going to happen again. And then to set to make sure that didn't happen again. Building my skills. Yeah.
Right on. It's interesting to me because, and Shay, you've said it's not easy to run, which I think both Karen and I 100% agree with you. But I want to talk about the media, because it is that other aspect. And Karen, you're currently a columnist. So you've kind of jumped to the other side. I came from the other side. I was a reporter for a long time. Now I'm on the political side. And that is one of the big things about being a politician, is dealing with the media. And that's one of the biggest barriers I hear from women who are interested in going into politics, is they're worried about what the media is going to say about them. And that it's a conversation that comes up. Have you heard that as well, both of you? Is that one of the barriers you hear?
Can I jump in for a sec? I just want to go back to your comment about the boards.
Yeah, please.
And then but one of the things I would encourage women to do is get onto boards, whether it's not for profit or profit, and take a role that is not what your profession is.
Right.
And take the role, and that is a way of really growing skills, but also growing your network. Because one of the issues around equity on boards is that boards are often connected by friendship and relationships and who you know. So it's hard to get onto a board if you don't know the others that are on the board, or you don't know their friends or their family. And I think that actually really does matter for women who want to go into politics and be engaged, is being involved in boards. I've always been involved in boards since I was about 21, and I've been on a variety of boards. But it's been a great environment for learning. In terms of the media, I think that you kind of have to decide to be fearless if you're going to become an advocate or a public person. You have to decide that, you know, how someone perceives you and what they'll write about you does not really matter, because if you do think about that, you would never go into any kind of public life at all.
Yeah, what a shame, eh? But it's true.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the issues that hurts a lot of women, because we can be, so careful about, how we are being perceived. And we can be thinking about that. And, especially for a lot of women, weight and your, body image and being shamed online and all these, things that actually have nothing to do with who you are really as a human being, really count. And you kind of just have to decide, you have to be courageous and say, I'm here for the issue or the issues or for this group that has no voice. And I'm going to speak as much as I can. And I'm going to, be as truthful and authentic as I can be.
You know what? I think that that's such a great point, Shay, because it's that idea that if you're there for a reason and you're passionate about your cause, all that other noise doesn't matter. And I think that that's the focus, and it's a good reminder. So I appreciate that. Karen?
You needed to hear that today.
I did need to hear that today.
So one of the things I really feel passionately about, I was raised in a house that Irish mother, Italian father, and so we always had really strong argumentative dinners. So I knew how to engage in arguments from an early age in a way that I was determined I was going to win. That was my goal, right? So I spent a lot of time teaching young women how to engage in conflict in a positive way. So we're trained in order to avoid conflict. We're it's a bad word in our societal norms. And I really actually feel it's the greatest opportunity if we could reframe that idea of conflict and teach our young women to understand how to have difficult conversations and how to actually step into those conversations and use them in a whole new way and leverage them in order to move forward. I think we would do everyone a big favor, because right now I think we as a society shy away from conflict. It makes us uncomfortable. But I tell you, that political frame, that conflict frame is actually really rich. It's really rich, and that's where change happens.
Yes.
That's where change happens. That's where the energy is. That's where the, all that catalytic stuff is happening. And that's where we need to be.
And I think going back to that point, then, if you're super passionate about something, even if someone's saying it is coming at you the other way, like I think about the pro-choicers in Detroit at the women's conference. I mean, you just believe so strongly in your beliefs, or gun control, whatever it might be. They've got so many issues there, but that it doesn't matter what's being said on the other side, because you're so confident and you're so that is a foundational piece of why you are being, and I love that term, fearless. And just engaging in conflict positively. So great.
And part of that is understanding that there are alternative views. And what's the saying, that a truly intelligent person can hold two thoughts in their head and think about them without having that, primal physical reaction to one of them and being hooked in to that, that fight or flight mentality. But to actually think about ideas is it's a mature step, I guess, but boy, oh boy, we'd all benefit from it.
Yeah.
One of the things I think about, though, is just in that regard is, I think when we avoid conflict, we also avoid growth. And there's a growth piece here as a society, a global society, a national society, that we have to get through, that I think is not about equality. It is about pushing through the hard stuff so that we can come up with a new way, a new collaborative, synergistic way of working together and working respectfully and in a dignified manner with others. We have to actually do it and practice it so that people can see what it's like and know that it's a valuable business proposition, that you can get to a solution that includes all people when you go through that process. We've been so dominated by this, top-down way of this idea that one person makes a decision, that even consensus is not really consensus, it's really consensus through domination. That what ends up happening is that people get shut down before they actually get to the fight. And there's a way to fight without drawing blood. And I think that, I actually feel that the wave of feminism that we're in now is the one where those of us who have been, sort of the inheritors of all the, the feminism that has come before. We have to assimilate what has come before us, and now take that and create a new weapon to fight in the current world that we're in. And it's very, very scary. It means that we're going to be doing it in the boardrooms, in the hospital, and it's a different kind of fight. It's not a protest. It's not a rally. It's being at the table and saying, no, I'm sorry. Here's the data.
Yeah.
Here's the data. Here's actually what works, and I am not afraid to tell you.
Yay! I love it. Okay. So I'm blowing kisses across Canada. Okay, so my last question is, because I think if anybody's watching this, I hope they've sort of heard the good, the bad, the ugly, and most importantly, that this is the new wave of feminism.
Yes.
And the time is now. The time is now. Yeah.
It happens now.
Yeah,
Got
it's
my
now.
T-shirts. This is what feminism looks like.
Oh, I love it.
I know. Sporting the tea. So if we talk about that, and people are inspired and they want to start to begin, from both of you, what's your advice to women who are considering running for politics?
Who are you talking to first?
You go first, Karen.
Okay. I would say you start reaching out to people, because we're not that great at finding people. So we tend to be, I think, when we're communities like Kitchener-Waterloo, where we are, the leadership circles are kind of tight, and in order to step into those circles, you have to be a little creative and perhaps a little aggressive. So I've been approached. I have 7 women right now that I'm working with in order to prepare them for next year's municipal elections. Mm-hmm. And it's like Shay said, it's about building relationships, and they need to find mentors. They need to have conversations. Our community, we're lucky, Melissa, we have things like municipal women's campaign school that you and I are both involved in. We have structures in place in order to help facilitate that jump, but I can't think that's the same across the country. So it's time to it's time for us to open our eyes and to start tapping young women on their shoulders and saying, what, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Think about this, if not now, perhaps in the future, and for us to be open to being mentors.
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
50%.
The mentorship piece is huge, because I think it gives people a sense of security and a sense that they've got something behind them, or they've got someone behind them. I think research is critical. Like, go where you're interested, but also really research it, find out what the deal is, find out who's involved, who are the caretakers, who are the, stakeholders, who's behind the scenes, and get to know people before you start getting involved in the media or social media and tweeting about things. Get really, really informed. Get clear about your own business, right? So get clear about who you are. Get clear about who you believe, like what you believe in about yourself. Yeah. So because what will happen is that people will come up to you and say things that will shake you if you do not know who you are. And then be prepared. Be prepared to fight for a long time and to look at different ways of participating in politics. So for some people, it's running and it's being a candidate. But for some people, it's being a campaign manager, or it's being a fundraiser. It's being someone who does analysis. It's someone who does PR. There's so many different ways that people can participate. You don't have to be always the person up at the front and take on all the risk. So, but I think there's a, umbrella of things, or let's say it's a basket, and you have to kind of go around and put a bunch of things in your basket and then put it out on the table and say, do I believe in this? Do I want to fight for this? What am I willing to give up for this? And what do I love about this? And then use that to build a platform, almost like a business platform of, what's your value to the community, so that every time you speak, what your value is. And if you decide that you want to go into party politics and not, municipal politics, you have to be clear when the party says, this is what we stand for, this is our brand, that you can say, I agree with that, or no, or here's how that intersects.
Yeah.
And that all of that stuff is really upfront, because, I think the other thing is that it'll be a shock for some people when they come out publicly as a political person and they realize the road kind of clears in front of them. And there's one side with the people who are like, yes, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm so happy for you. And I'm with you. And then there's a whole lot of other people on the other side who are like, oh my God, I can't, I don't know what that is about. I'm not interested. Like, you're scaring me. I lost a major contract when I had my consulting business and I was running the first time, and I lost a huge contract because I got into party politics. And it was a phenomenal lesson because one, when you're good and you're educated, and I'm not talking about degrees, I'm talking about, information, you'll never be out of work. So it doesn't matter, right? You might eat, like bread and noodles for a few weeks, and that's a problem for the kids. But, try to give them tuna, and they're like, ew, what's that? But you can get over it. Yeah. But when you are not clear about what your value proposition is and what you represent and what you stand for and who you stand for, if you're going into politics for superficial reasons, it's not the right game.
Shows up really quickly.
Yeah, it does. It has been a delight speaking to both of you, and Canada is lucky to have amazing leaders like you, Karen Scian, and you, Shay. I got a pin you here for a second. There you go. And you, Shay, you're amazing too. Thank you guys so much. And I'm just going to finish off this podcast then real quickly, which is thank you, of course, to our amazing guests. And thanks to everyone that tuned in and listened. I hope that you learned something here. I did, and I'm inspired too by these incredible women. Your comments are welcomed and encouraged. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and our children, the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country. That's what Women's March Canada stands for. This is the Women's March Canada podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and on our website at www.womensmarchcanada.com. I'm Melissa Durrell, and it has been a pleasure. Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Pleasure.